Sorry.
because we're part of another group where we're trying to do research on the coca leaf.
Ah, okay.
And
Interesting.
so we're always, so right now we're in the process of, looking for investors to support that.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Well, this will be focused on WTT and what they're doing, but probably, it'll be of interest for sure.
Mhm. So I think Stacy's gonna dial in pretty soon.
Okay, great. And I think Zbigniew, are you there? You're trying to connect with audio, it sounds like. I wonder if people are having struggling with their internet. Hi. Hi, Marcelo.
Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. I think I recognize you from the summit. Were you involved in the summit? in May?
Yes, I've been in some of the panels.
Yeah, I
Yes.
thought so. I thought so. It was such a overwhelming event that
Yeah, it was a lot of really nice information.
Yeah. And Andre is trying to come in. For some reason it's not quite working. And you've been well, Marcelo? Everything's going?
Yes, we are nice here now in Xingu River. Like the vaccines are going too fast. Like in the city, we got the vaccinations of all indigenous people and the riverines.
Wow.
So we are in the slowly getting back to the other agenda besides COVID.
Yeah. Oh, that's intense. Well, that's
Crazy
congratulations
times.
to just getting that level of vaccination is a huge accomplishment.
How about you?
Good. Yeah, I'm in Washington, D.C. and it's hot, but people are, starting to come out of the woodwork and spend time with one another, and just exciting stuff with the Amazon Investor Coalition. So much great follow-up from the summit. There's a lot of energy to capture and move. So we've got people joining. Our speaker, though, I see is trying to join, so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, we might not have that many people today. It's a holiday.
I know. Green Coke. Who's that? How are you, Marina?
I'm fine. How are you, Sarah?
I am good.
Hey, Mike.
Hey,
Good
Marcelo.
to see you here.
Good to see you too. We still need to talk, huh? Oh, Claudio.
Yes, let's set an agenda.
Oh my God, look
Hey,
who's
Claudio.
here too. David.
Nice to see you. Oh. You're recording this call. Turn that off.
How are people doing? We're slowly adding bit by bit here. For people who've joined, just wait a few minutes while everyone hops on. I see some familiar names. Let's give, I think. Is Andre, are you on? I see your name, but I don't see you.
Yeah, here I am.
There you
Can't
are.
Can't you see my camera?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, great.
Nice to see you. Is the sound and everything okay for you?
Yes, everything's all right.
Great. Well, should we get started?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Ingersoll. I'm part of the Amazon Investor Coalition team. And as many of you know, we are a coalition of investors and philanthropists working with governments and communities and for-profits and nonprofits to advance forest-friendly investment in the Amazon. And we're particularly interested in how we can educate prospective investors and donors about how they can participate in this opportunity. And that is why we're really pleased to have Andre Wojciechowski as part of our conversation today, because he's been thinking about this a lot, thinking and working on this. And he works with the World Transforming Technologies group and is going to share a little bit about how they were formed, the background that inspired their work, and then many of the issues and opportunities that he sees in the Brazil. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it right over to you, Andre.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. Hello, everyone. Good to be talking to you. So I'm going to talk about two main topics here. The first one is a broad overview of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Amazon. If you saw our discussion on the Amazon Investor Summit a couple of years ago, this is what I'm going to talk about. So sorry if this is a repeat for you. And then I'm going to talk about one initiative that we launched last year, which tries to address a specific gap in the ecosystem. So let me move on to that. So before we do that, just tell you a little bit about WTT. World Transforming Technologies is a foundation created here in Brazil, but with an intention to work in all of the countries in Latin America. And the reason behind creating WTT was that we realized a number of years ago, this was around 2010, that the ecosystem for supporting impact businesses in the region was pretty strong. There were a number of impact investing funds, accelerators, incubators, looking specifically at these type of organizations. But the main complaint or the main gap in the ecosystem was the lack of a good, robust pipeline with the potential for scaling. So there was a lack of pipeline, the perceived main issue in the ecosystem. So we decided to create an organization which eventually became WTT. It was initially a program in another foundation called Fundación Avina, which would try to figure how to bring innovations from universities and from national laboratories across the region to the market. So there was a perception there that there was a lot of brilliant people doing research, basic or applied research in the innovation spaces, in R&D spaces in the region, but that there were not enough mechanism for bringing these scientists and their researchers to the market. So WTT was created with that aim, to mobilize capital, but also to support in management, to create the connections, etc. Everything that was needed to bring those solutions to market. In the first years, we mainly supported scientists working in really disruptive technologies, mostly around energy, water treatment, and recycling. In the second stage of WTT, we also started doing experimentation, creating room for experimenting potential innovations in the field. So we realized that that was also a gap in the ecosystem. So there was not that many opportunities for inventors to take their technologies, take their innovations to the field, experiment with them really well, alongside communities, alongside investors, industry. So we created a second program aimed at creating this space, creating room for experimenting with innovation in the field. So that was the early days of WTT. I will eventually come and talk about our new program, which is the Innovation Orchestration Center. But before that, let me talk a little bit about the ecosystem in the region. So can you see my presentation already? Yeah, okay. So this is borrowed from Fundación Cerci. Fundación Cerci is an important foundation based in Florianópolis here in Brazil. They've been doing a lot of work trying to understand what are the gaps in the ecosystem in the Amazon. So I'm going to use their material to talk a little bit about that. So this is their view of the pathway, let's say, all the way from creating knowledge and talents, all the way to creating startups, accelerating or incubating those organizations, accessing capital, and finally accessing the market. So this is how they see all of this journey, they call it Amazon journey. And now I'm going to talk about some of the numbers of what's going on there. So in terms of knowledge, and this knowledge refers to research lines that are being carried out in all of the 9 states of the legal Amazon. And we have quite a lot of them, so almost 2,000 research lines. So there's a lot of knowledge being generated in the spaces that do science in the Amazon. This includes universities, national laboratories, universities, both state and national universities. Lots of organizations doing research, generating knowledge in the Amazon. And therefore, lots of talents being generated there as well. So there are almost 3,000 courses. This is graduation up. So graduations and postgrads and PhDs, etc., that are related somehow to the bioeconomy. Okay, so all of the courses around bioeconomy given in the legal Amazon amount to 2,700 courses. So that's a lot of talent, and a lot of knowledge, and a lot of talent being generated every year in the region. Now, when we move on to the number of startups directly related to the biodiversity of the Amazon, we have only 50 of them. And this is across Brazil. This is not only in the Amazon. So there's clearly a very low conversion rate of all of this talent and knowledge being generated and actual startups being created there. Yeah? So we realize there's something going on there. All of this knowledge is not translating into good, profitable, scalable startups. When we move on to accelerators and incubators, there's also 50. So this is kind of crazy. We have pretty much one-to-one startups to accelerators and incubators. So you can probably pretty much assume that accelerators and incubators are pretty empty at the moment. They're not doing that much, but they are ready. They're waiting for startups to come. And there's not a month that goes by without people talking about creating a new accelerator, creating a new hub. We have plenty of that, but clearly the issue is the low number of startups. Moving on, in terms of capital, this is a capital that could be, that's in offer to all of these startups. Again, there's more capital lines there, more capital organizations providing capital than startups that are able to access that capital. So this is clearly another sign that there's something wrong with in the startup phase, the startup creation phase. And finally, so now the really strong ecosystem to support those startups. We have plenty of accelerators, there's lots of capital. Even in terms of market, there are a number of organizations that already access the bioproducts of the Amazon. So in one side, we have a lot of knowledge and talents being generated there. On the other hand, we also have a lot of potential for accelerating, incubating, providing capital to these startups. But clearly, there's a really lack of good, well-funded, well-run startups to benefit from all of this ecosystem support. So there's this back in 2018, I guess, we started to think about this and to think about how we can address this issue, yeah? How we can make that a larger part of this talent and this knowledge being generated, that there actually becomes no startups, actually become products available to the market. So starting from this assumption, yeah, this hypothesis that there are loads of really intelligent Brazilian scientists based in the Amazon doing really high quality research with a lot of potential for social environmental transformation. So we start from this assumption of this recognition, perhaps, that there are brilliant scientists there. Many of them are willing to engage with industry. Many of them are willing to take their research further and closer to the market. But for one reason or another, they're not finding the right tools or the right people to help them along this path. And one of the problems we realize is how science is financed in Brazil. Much of the science, all of the instruments that finance innovation in science in Brazil, of all of them, I would say a very large majority are driven by individual research questions. So the way it works is that each scientist or research group will write a proposal, present to one of the many financiers of public financiers, mostly of science in Brazil, and they will receive a small grant that will enable them to take perhaps one further step in their research. But this is all driven by the researcher individual question. Not much science in Brazil is done in a strategic way, thinking about what are the really key points where Brazil should be investing in science. You know, what are our main issues? What are the questions that need to be answered? What are the problems that need to be solved? Or looking on the other side of the coin, what are our capabilities? What is our potential that we could, spur and transform it into products, into solutions for Brazil's many social and environmental challenges. So we started to talk about in this sense of how do we do more mission-oriented innovation in Brazil. You may have heard this term, mission-oriented science or mission-oriented innovation, from Professor Mariana Mazzucato. She's an Italian researcher based in London who has been writing extensively about it. And she writes mostly from a government point of view. So what are the public policies that could help countries do more mission-oriented science and less research-driven science driven by research questions? So she's been talking a lot about that, and we felt it was useful to use this language of mission-oriented, but applying it to a very particular theme, which is the science done in Brazil, and how we can create mechanisms, strategies to make it more mission-oriented. So we spend perhaps a couple of years talking to people here in Brazil. We spend a couple of months in the US, visiting a number of organizations that are doing it there. And two organizations, I would mention two organizations that were very important to us. One is actually two organizations, DARPA and ARPA-E. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and ARPA-E is its equivalent for the energy sector. And basically what they're doing is they're trying to harness the best science done in the US to move along some really important issues for the US, both in terms of defense as well as in terms of energy. So trying to harness the power of the good science done there in order to do useful things for society. They have a number of methodologies to do that. DARPA in particular has been doing this for maybe 30 years. So they really know how to do this type of mission-oriented innovation. And perhaps the central pillar of the strategies used by those two organizations is that they have no labs of their own. They have no scientists doing research for themselves. What they do is they try to find out who are the best people in the country to do this very specific thing that I need done. So they come up with a number of missions of a number of strategies, and then they try to figure out who are the best people I can invite for a limited number of years, perhaps 1 or 2 years, keeping them in their institutions of origin, so they don't make the scientists, change their career path. They can still do science as they would normally do, but part of their time would be dedicated to creating solutions for important problems. So this is very inspirational for the way we designed the Orchestration Center. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just to mention, the second organization that was really inspirational for us is the Institute for Transformative Technologies. This is an institution that was created inside Lawrence Berkeley National Lab in Berkeley, California. It's a very special place. They have perhaps 2,000 scientists, a $1 billion a year budget for doing applied science. And they realized at some point that, they certainly did useful things, but perhaps they could do more for society if they came up with a number of missions that their scientists would embrace, that would direct their work towards creating solutions for society's problems. So they decided to create this institute inside the National Laboratory. I think it's one of its kind in the US. And the idea was that they would find the best people in Berkeley lab and invite them to be parts of teams that would create solutions for important problems for sustainable development. So let me move on here. So a little bit about how we do it. And again, this was very much inspired in DARPA and ARPA-E. So we have at the moment 3 programs, one in circular economy, one in regenerative agriculture, and one in bioeconomy. This one is at this moment specifically for the Amazon. And the idea is that all of these pillars, which are really broad, would be perhaps focused or translated into a number of really addressable problems or missions, if you want, that are possible to achieve, concrete, and that will therefore have the idea that you can accomplish this in a limited time frame, inviting really good scientists. Yeah? So the first step is always to translate or to define a very limited and impactful number of missions or problems for each of these pillars. The next step is to find the best people to run those missions. Yeah? So the idea is that for each problem, we have here, for example, 3 problems, problem 1 and 2 and 3. The idea is that for each of them, we would figure out what needs to be done exactly. So this is not a broad mission. This is really something that can be achieved, very concrete. So the first step is then deciding what are these problems. And second step is finding the best people to create solutions for these problems. So what we do is then we do a mapping. We try to understand who are the best scientists working anywhere in the country that could help create a solution for these problems. Yeah. So the idea is that we will take as a starting point the research that been done by these people, invite the best of them for each particular, let's say, piece of the puzzle. We see it kind of as a puzzle. Let me open it up a little bit more. So the idea is that we have a puzzle to accomplish, and we will invite different scientists to develop each piece of the puzzle, and then we'll create a system where all of the pieces of the puzzle can be integrated. Yeah? So the idea is that each, what we call sub-project here, is carried out by a single scientist or a research group, and they will have their own deliverables, activities, resources, very clear responsibilities, a clear schedule, et cetera, and their own budgets as well. And that all of these different solutions, each part of the solution gets integrated in different moments in such a way that at the end of the process, we have an integrated solution. And our role as the orchestration center is first to define the problems, and this is done in consultation with many stakeholders. So the first step is defining the problems. Second step, also done by the COI, is finding these people, mapping the scientists and evaluating the quality of their research and understanding how we can help create solutions. And finally, putting these people together, and creating a system for managing these different groups of scientists working each on their own laboratory, on their own universities, but in a collaborative way with many moments where the solutions get integrated. I'll give a real example of that. So this is the next slide. So one of the things that we've been doing is to create a bio-based polypropylene. This is the PP plastic. This started as a broad mission to, or a broad pillar. In the bioeconomy pillar, we realized that doing biodegradable, bio-based plastics was an interesting thing to do for many reasons. You replace fossil-based plastics, you create value to the forest, you generate income for the people of the forest. So there are many, let's say, advantages in going for a bio-based plastic chain. We started also having discussions with the industry. In the Amazon, we have an important industrial zone called Polo Industrial de Manaus. Many industries in Brazil are based there because of fiscal incentives. So it was one step as well, was to talk to the industry and say, so we're thinking about doing bioplastics in the Amazon. Where do you use plastics? Are you willing to replace fossil-based plastics by bio-based plastics? Exactly what type of plastics would you do that? So we had a number of conversations with industrial players operating from Manaus, from the Amazon, to come to the conclusion that polypropylene was one important plastic that they use. Also, marrying, let's say, that view, that demand from the industry with what's possible, what's available in terms of scientific research. So on one hand, we were talking to the industry, trying to understand what are their needs. On the other hand, we were talking to universities, to researchers in the Amazon, to try to understand what is being done related to bioplastic that I can take to market in perhaps 1 year, maybe 2 years. What are really advanced researchers, or really, let's say, things that are really outstanding, yeah? And then we came to the conclusion that polypropylene was one of them. Yeah, there was demand from the industry, and there was also excellent people doing brilliant work related to that. So coming back to the project. So this is perhaps there are 3 components to this project. The first one is to characterize the fibers. Yeah, so we've chosen two, let's say, two things that are leftovers from other processes. These are wood chips. So wood is used for many things, and there are some chips that are kind of a leftover. So there's plenty of that at cost 0. And also Brazil nuts shells. So you basically have a lot of material outside the Brazil nuts itself, and perhaps 4/5 of it, of the organic matter there, is leftover. So there's also thousands and thousands of tons of this, which currently is just standing there. Nobody has any decent use for that. So these are two starting points, industrial waste, let's say, that's there at cost almost zero, that could be used to do bio-based plastics. And so we found the best researcher doing characterization of these fibers, really understanding how they behave, how you can process it, how you can, what are the uses for this, what useful features they aggregate to material. So we went and find the best researcher studying fiber, these two fibers in the Amazon, and he's based at Universidade Estadual do Amazonas. The second tranche there is testing different formulations in the lab, first in the lab. And there are many possibilities there. We could use virgin polypropylene with the fibers, recycled polypropylene with the fibers, or even a bio-based polypropylene with the fibers. So we're experimenting with all of these possible combinations to understand what is the result of using each one of them in which percentage, what is the best pre-treatment, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to investigate what are the best formulations, really, running perhaps hundreds of tests. And the lead institution there is Universidade Federal do Amazonas. So the first one was the Estadual. This one is the Federal University. We went and found a really brilliant researcher doing this kind of tests with different formulations in UFAM, and we invited him for the project. Finally, the third leg there is to how we industrialize this process and the formulations. And then we brought someone who is not in the Amazon, is at the Universidade Federal do Paraná in the south of Brazil, who is really a materials engineer. So she understands really well how to bring different formulations and different process from, let's say, a semi-industrial scale all the way to an industrial scale. So how do you adapt the machines? What are the tests you need to make? How do you come back and again test the formulations in the lab so you can then take them again to the industrial process? So someone who really understands how to do this. So we also brought her to the team. So we have a team of 3 people, each with their own clear responsibility, and but they're also working together. They're all standing at their own labs, but they have moments in which they discuss what's the best approach. They hand over work to the next person. So the idea is that at the end of this process, we will have an industry scale process and formulation ready to be taken to the industry.
So Andre, I love that story, and I've been so impressed by how grounded it is in that analysis that you all did, and how strategic you are in setting this all up. I want to make sure to turn it to other people to ask some questions, but I have one myself very quickly, which is this: how is this being funded? You have the foundation piece, but it sounds like a pretty expensive endeavor once it's scaling. And then what's the process, or what's the plan for investments in the solutions?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Actually, I'm going to move to the next slide to answer that one. So let me take those questions one by one. For how is it being financed? At the first stage, so the stages of defining the problem, mapping the scientists, evaluating their research, and creating the research or the development project, all of this is being financed by a German foundation called Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, which is very much interested in seeing bioeconomy become a reality. So we presented a project to them saying, we need to get to this stage where we have the projects specifying who is going to be involved, what are they going to do, how much is it going to cost, etc. So we counted on philanthropic resources for up to that stage. Now, from that stage onwards, when we actually need to invest in development, it's a different ballgame. Right? It's much more expensive. But fortunately, we have a couple of things in our favor here. First is that in Brazil, as I mentioned, there are hundreds, of different research financing lines for doing innovation, either public or semi-public or semi-private if you have, which can be used for doing these kinds of things. I'll give an example. FAPESP, which is the foundation that sponsors public research here in the state of São Paulo, which is the biggest in Brazil, has $1 billion annual budget. So it's a lot of money that goes into research. So part of it can be accessed for purposes like this. Another potential funding line are the corporations, who are interested in producing these things or using these things in their products. In this case here, we have, for example, for this phase here, the fiber preparation and extrusion and injection, which are industrial processes, we have approached a number of organizations in Manaus who do it for fossil-based plastics. And one of them showed a lot of interest in being the producer of this bio-based polypropylene in the Amazon. So they're going to invest their own money in the research and to build an industrial capacity for them to be able to do it. So we have an industrial partner which is willing to produce this, and they were also willing to fund at least part of the research. And here, for example, in the EU, so who are they going to sell this to? We've been having discussions with Honda, for example, which is also has an industrial plant in the Amazon, which is saying, I want to use these plastics as a wrapping for my motorcycles. We discussed using it for the motorcycles themselves, but you can imagine to change anything in a motorcycle, it's probably years of research and tests, etc. So we decided to take the easy way and use it as a wrapping for the motorcycles. So we have lined up someone who is actually going to produce this thing, prepare the fibers, do the extrusion and injection, produce the final bit of piece of plastic, and someone who is saying, I'm going to buy it. So there's let's say a market already in sight for that program. Now, in the Amazon, and that's important to say, there's one fiscal instrument called the PPBio, Programa Prioritário em Bioeconomia, which funnels some of the R&D monies. It's complicated, but there's one demand that organizations that are based in Polo Industrial de Manaus, they receive fiscal incentives, and therefore they must invest, if I'm not mistaken, 5% of their profit in R&D. So that's a law that states that 5% of their profit needs to be invested in R&D. And now, since perhaps last year, there is a mechanism which enables these industries to canalize the part of this R&D to projects in bioeconomy. And this is we're talking here also about $1 billion figure. So there's a lot of money in the Amazon that can be invested. Part of it must be invested, but can be invested in R&D related to the bioeconomy. So it's a complicated, financial engineering to get all the way from, mapping the scientists all the way to forming the teams and actually creating the process and the product.
It's brilliant, and will be such a useful example for other industries and products. So I want to turn it over to some of the participants here to ask questions. We had two in the chat room. Andre asked, how do you see the scientists and the researchers connecting with the, as you put it, the real problems of the Amazon rainforest nowadays? So you talked about kind of how it's tied with the strategy and they're sort of mission oriented, but I don't know if maybe you want to explain it a tiny bit more, Marcelo, in terms of what you're thinking there for that question. I've stepped away.
No, it's just to explain a little bit more. Thank you, Andrea, for your amazing presentation. I think this is a very hot issue in the Amazon rainforest, but from where I see, there are a disconnection between many researchers that is going on the field, with the major problems, especially on bioeconomy development, on a community level based solutions, and so on. That's why I'm asking you that from this point, for connecting like researchers, scientists to the problems of the Amazon rainforest, how far you see them to the field, or how close do you see them to the field?
I think they're pretty far, but very much willing to engage. Our experience so far, talking to scientists and explaining them what we want to do, and explaining them, we found your research brilliant. I think you're doing amazing work. What do you think about taking this another step and creating real solutions with this research? Usually the response is very positive. I think, well, everybody really wants to have a positive effect on society, so that's kind of, we can take that for granted. I think there's also a real interest in being part of really extraordinary teams. Yeah, so we're trying to, for example, one strategy important to us is to have a scientific committee at the COI made up of really, let's say, outstanding people who can attract outstanding people. So we're trying to create some sort of a virtual cycle here, having really good people, inspirational people, attracting good scientists as well. So that's kind of been working. And there's also other things that we can offer to bring the scientists closer. First is money. Yeah, so if you can, usually this research line, public research lines are very limited in what you can do. You cannot buy equipment, you cannot pay salaries. There's lots of restrictions there, and we're trying, with philanthropic money at least with that part of the financing structure, we can do whatever we want. We can have them buy equipment, we can have them, hire people. So we're pretty much flexible in that sense. So there's lots of things there, I think, that are useful to attracting good scientists. What we also want to do, and that's the kind of the first phase, is asking the right question. Yeah. So we spend quite a lot of time trying to figure out what is the right question to ask. What is the problem that we really want to address? And in that part of the work, we really work closely with the communities, with people that are working with the communities. So there's a lot of effort there in getting the communities on board from a very early stage, so they can be on board all along the way. I don't know if that answers your question.
That's great. What can you say a little bit more about what you think the hurdles are for attracting international and national financing at the various points of this process?
Yeah, I think from our experience is the long-term nature of the project. Yeah, lots of people would say, I'm not interested in doing, getting this research from basic research all the way to a product, because there are so many scientific hurdles before you can even start talking about market hurdles. Yeah, so there's a challenge to actually get a product in the first place before you can even start talking about creating a startup, getting this product in the market. So it's risky, and research or applied research can cost a lot of money. So I'll say those two things make it harder. So there are many things we can do about that. We can start from research which is not that basic, from technology readiness level, I don't know, 4 or 5, for example, which is a little bit more, you have some sort of a minimal viable product already built. So perhaps you can start from there, using philanthropic money as an initial seed fund, so I can then access the big money, which is in the hands of the various government institutions or private institutions in the case of incentivized R&D money. So those are some of the strategies that we have been using to try to make the whole thing happen.
Danielle, you have some questions that I think are good ones for the general. general audience here.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Andre.
Hello, Danielle.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I really loved what you shared at the summit. And yeah, I really applaud this work. You're running science like a mission-oriented business, with product market fit front and center of mind. I pivoted away from my career in science, focused in the Brazilian Amazon, because before I joined the team of the Amazon Investor Coalition, squarely because of the lack of strategic thinking of science. And so bravo for doing this work, so focused on kind of solutions-oriented innovation. I'd love to email you separately to follow up on this. Just a few questions here. You said the innovation ecosystem is there, but the conversion rate is low because of the kind of ad hoc manner that science is being done in finance. All of this knowledge is not being translated into good, profitable startups. Are there places in the world that have a more integrated pipeline that we can learn from? What is the conversion rate that we should be aiming for? And then do you have a sense of the turnover over the last, relevant, a couple of decades, of how many? There are now 50 existing Amazon bioeconomy startups that you've mapped. How many? What is the creative destruction process? How many attempt and then fail, and what does that rate look like?
I wouldn't know how to say for sure, but the feeling we have is that there are a number of them being created every year. Many of them wouldn't survive the first couple of years of operations for a number of reasons. What I think is a must is to think about the whole supply chain. So in this case that I showed here, yeah, bioplastics. So first of all, we need to find some raw material that is available all year long in sufficient quantity in a standardized quality. So that's one hurdle. That limits what type of actives from the forest you can use. Then there's a whole issue around logistics. Yeah, so some of these communities are really far, and transporting them over large distances, typically by boat, costs a lot of money. Sometimes even the shelf life of their material is just not long enough, so you cannot transport it in a raw form. So you need to do some processing in the communities, and then there's some complexities in doing that, starting from the lack of electricity, for example, so stable electricity. So many challenges there as well. Then you need someone who will receive this material and process it, or transform it into something else. I think that is perhaps the easiest part, but someone will only do that if there's a clear market opportunity. And I guess in many cases, the market is very dispersed. There's competition from other countries as well. So it's a business risk there. So lots of disincentives to do it as well. And finally, you need ideally someone who commits to purchasing that. Yeah. So we worked with sustainable cotton, for example, a couple of years ago. And there was one company, which was Verti, which makes fashion sneakers, who made something which is really rare in this space, which is a long-term commitment to purchase any amount of cotton, sustainable cotton, produced by a number of communities. And this was life-changing for the communities. Yeah, so they had like for as many years, as much as you produce, I will buy for this price. So everything was agreed in advance, which gave huge incentives for family farmers in that area to switch their productions to sustainable cotton. And I'm not sure how many examples of that we have in the Amazon. This example was in the semi-arid of Brazil. And I think it's an outstanding example, but really rare. So I would think that more organizations willing to make this sort of long-term commitment would would be needed for this to really happen in a large scale.
Thank you for that. We got a quick question from Tony Lent about the process, and then Claudia, and then David, I think, has a great question for us to round this out. Tony, did you want to go ahead and ask that question?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways of making bio-based polypropylene. And as you probably know, in Brazil, Braskem has been pursuing an ethanol dehydration process. I'm assuming you're using biomass or you're using cellulose. And from what I can tell, Mitsui Chemicals is focused on that route. Have you done a global scan for who's doing biomass pulp to polypropylene and what the process is? Because it's probably already been semi-commercialized somewhere.
Yeah, again, this is not my specialty, but I had to learn a little bit about it. So there are a number of companies doing it. There are different types of what they call green plastic. Some of them are biodegradable, which is not the case of Braskem, for example. Braskem is bio-based, so it uses ethanol, sugarcane ethanol as a base, but it is not biodegradable. So in the end, you have the exact same problem you have with traditional plastics, with the benefit of having grown as sugarcane and not straight away from oil. But it's not biodegradable. What we're trying to do there is, as we use as a base some microbes that usually work with cellulose to produce the base, let's say, in which we add the fibers. So the idea is that, and this is also a commercial product. We can buy it from the shelf. There are a number of how do you say it? Acronyms for it. So PLA, PHBA, PHB. There are a number of ways to produce it. You can buy it from the shelf. But in Brazil, at least, there's no one producing it in any decent scale in Brazil. So we have to import the whole thing. Today is pretty expensive. So in what we'll try to do in our formulations is to have as much fibers as possible as a percentage of the whole thing, because we can buy the fibers for zero cost pretty much. So that's one way we're trying to reduce the cost of the bio PP here.
Thank you. Claudia, you have a question.
Hi.
Or comment.
Thank you very much, and great, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Well, I've sent you a message through the Bate-Papo. Have a look later, please.
Okay.
And also, are you thinking in one of the things I miss in Amazonia is in the Amazonian products is design, marketing, lots of things that should be, in my view, be included in a multidisciplinary team as you are putting together in thinking in new products, especially products from the communities. Are you thinking in this as well, or not yet?
Yeah, so there are loads of things we can do. We decided to start with bioplastics because we were told there are people researching that, really different things coming out of the Amazon. We understood that it was an interesting way of adding value to products already taken from the forest. So this is just a starting point. I think there are loads of things we can study. And perhaps a challenge there is where to focus. Yeah, so there's so many things, so many, bioactives useful for pharmaceutical industry, cosmetics industry, food industry. So how to choose? So that's always a bit of a huge debate. But with experimenting with bioplastics, I think one thing important to say here as well is that when we began, we heard repeatedly, you're not going to find interesting research in the Amazon. There's all of the labs there are really old. It's going to be a waste of time. We actually heard that a number of times. Even Fundação Certi, which is amazing, when they mapped all of the research coming out of the Amazon, they're the ones that mapped 2,000 research lines. We asked them, did you find something in bioplastics? And they told us, we didn't, there was nothing. But actually there is. So I think there's also some things that need to be improved in the way of, how do we talk about these things? How do people know what is being developed, in the Amazon by people, not only from the Amazon biodiversity, but from people living in the Amazon.
Sure.
And part of our work here is to make this visible, is to tell the stories. So for example, we're writing a publication right now to talk about these people. Now, who are these people doing really interesting research in the Amazon? So I think an important part of our mission here is to I don't know if there's such a word in English, visibilize, or make visible the brilliant research being done in the Amazon.
Yep, and one thing you didn't mention so much was the work that WTT does around your own some investment, right? And strategic planning and project management and networking for those projects that do exist and that are more investment ready. Is that correct? Or did I misread that on the website?
Yeah. So part of our work is to support really, frontier science, but that's even trickier to do and even harder to do, because these are things. For example, we found a Brazilian inventor who's been living in California for perhaps 2 decades. Who my honest guess is that he will be the first Nobel laureate, Brazilian Nobel laureate. He's absolutely brilliant. He has invented a way of transporting energy as light. So that's, hopefully you're gonna all heard about this guy in a few years. But it's really hard to do. It's really expensive. It's really hard to do that kind of thing in Brazil, because you really need equipment which is hardly available here. So for example, we had to hire the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany to actually build the thing. So he had the idea, he had all the formulas, but we couldn't do it in Brazil. We had to hire the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany. They were the only ones that actually had equipment to do it. So, and it's harder as well to raise money, because this is high risk. Who knows if it's actually possible to do it in a large scale. There are scientific hurdles, there are engineering hurdles. Even before you can start talking about, what's the market, what's the price, what's the cost. So it takes years of investment to actually get to a point where you can answer this type of question. And no normal investor, certainly not no fund has the patience or the timeline to invest in this kind of thing. So we end up, counting mostly on friends and family and friends of friends who are really inspired by what this guy is doing, for example, and are willing to put money to see it happen. But no proper fund with an investment thesis and the need to pay back their investors in 10-year time. We'll be able to do it. So it's really hard to finance that kind of radical thing. So we had to kind of create other strategies to make it happen in a shorter time span.
Well, the wonderful thing about the Amazon Investor Coalition is there are some creative investors and people who would be interested in that kind of long-term radical thinking. And in fact, David Hodgson asked earlier in the chat, so what would an Amazon Bioeconomy Innovation Fund need to look like to enable this innovation ecosystem? And it could be a very innovative innovation fund. It sounds like it might need to. I don't know, David, did you want to add any more to that question?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, yeah, I was just thinking about, if we've got to accelerate the emergence of the bioeconomy, right? How many different parallel threads could you basically be running right now, Andre? You've got the basic an amazing process developed there, and it really just comes down to how do you, accelerating the emergence comes down to parallelizing, just injecting a whole bunch of money into that core process, right? So we can run it against way more things than you're capable of running it against right now.
Yeah, I think it's, at the end, we're just one organization. This program, the Innovation Orchestration Center, is went live end of last year, so it's pretty recent. We have four projects at the moment running. We're still, building our team. We're using people from our own team part-time. We've finally been able to bring really experts in all of the thematic areas, experts in R&D management, experts in accessing public funding. So we're finally being able to, with the sum of all of these projects that we're running, there's a little bit, R&D manager, a little bit of it in each of project that we run. So now we've been able to actually build a really expert team, but we'll always be one. So I think part of what we do here is really to set an example, to show that it is possible, to show that there is intelligent life in the Amazon. There are brilliant researchers doing brilliant research, huge potential. I think part of our role is to tell these stories and show that it is possible. So hopefully we'll have a few examples, real examples in a couple of years that will inspire other people to do it. And again, I think there's a lot, as I showed in the beginning, there's lots of investment, lots of commercial interest in things from the Amazon. We're kind of creating a new route here. Hopefully it will be complementary to the ones that are already there. All of the ones that are already there are important. Accelerators are important. All of the programs, trying to support community-based organizations are really important. So we just have, perhaps one extra strategy to add to the mix there.
Nothing is going to survive if we don't add a lot of knowledge to it, and especially in this time of the 21st century. So what you are doing is fantastic in this sense, and that's why I want to talk to you later, but more deeply. And we need knowledge. Otherwise, we'll be always.
Totally, and knowledge is there. We need to harness the knowledge that is already there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we call it orchestration, because we felt that an orchestrator was lacking.
Yes.
There are brilliant scientists there willing to work with the communities in order to produce really useful things for society, but they don't know how to run to. And for example, what's also, there's a lot as well here in Brazil, is these open calls for innovators. So you launch a challenge or something like that and wait for the scientists to come. Scientists, they're not trained to come. You need to actually knock on their door and say, here, we created all the tools here. We need you are the centerpiece, but we created all these tools. We formed this partnership with this and that. So perhaps together we can do something useful.
And I am an academic, so you need to talk their language. Otherwise, they won't even understand what you want.
Well, I mean, what's so exciting, Andre, is you've really mapped out the inflection points, the opportunity points, and the barrier points. And we are so grateful to you for the work that you are doing and the opportunity for us to be working with you as we move forward to help connect those dots and bring in the points that can be supportive to this agenda. So we're going to close out the formal session here. But you can stay online if you guys want to continue to have the conversation. And again, just thank you, Andre, and for the participants on this. We're very excited and pleased to have you as part of this conversation and look forward to continuing.
Thank you, Sarah, and please, I invite you all to let's do this together. We're just, again, we're small, we're trying to do interesting things, but we need, all the good people we can have on our side. So everyone really is invited to try to find answers alongside us.
And can you stay on for another minute or two?
Yeah, of course.
Have some, okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
I think we just lost him.
Thank you so much, Andre. I've got to run.
You.
I would love to, I'm going to message you for follow-up.
Okay, let's do that.
That's okay.
Thanks,
Yeah, this is terrific. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Hi there, Sarah. Great. sorry, I was having likewise technical issues on getting internet working or computer issues. Good. So where do you think this can go in relationship to, Andre's work? And is there a way that we can help support? And, what is the best that we could do to catalyze this technology? And is there any thoughts that Andre has that wants to add in there? Thank you.
Yeah, and I know, Andre, you and Jonah have had many conversations, at various points, and he is moving across the country right now and really wanted to be part of this. But yeah, I would love to follow up on that question from Fiona's. I think it's saying, how can the Amazon Investor Coalition and the network that we have, how could we play a role in supporting this pipeline, advanced pipeline?
Well, I think events like this are really useful. I think a couple of people, I haven't read the chat yet, but I think there are some good connections here. I think really what we need to is to get the word out, tell people about what we're doing, what's the strategy, what we still need. I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. At the same time, while we try to run the whole thing and figure out what needs to change, what needs to be improved, is to tell the story really. And this is also kind of
you're doing a paper on the sort of, here's this incredible resource. What are the plans for distribution, and is there sort of who's the target audience there to be most strategic in getting that word out? Who needs to know that?
Yeah, I think that we ran one study already, which was around scientific collaborations for COVID-19, which is, unfortunately, it's just in Portuguese, but we kind of mapped scientific collaborations that happen in Brazil and beyond, or